2 months ago, my girlfriend's life and mine were ripped apart in a way I never thought possible. It started in a park, a place that should have been peaceful. But that night, it became the scene of a brutal attack. She was raped. When she came home that night, she was a shell of herself. She stumbled through the door, trembling uncontrollably, her face stained with tears. Her eyes were vacant, haunted, as if a part of her had died. She couldn't speak about what had happened. She wouldn't. She refused to go to the police or to the hospital. Instead, she locked herself away in her room, consumed by fear and despair. I stood by, feeling helpless, watching as she withdrew from the world. I wanted to reach her, to make it better, but there was nothing I could do. No words were enough. All I could do was be there, holding her hand through the sleepless nights, listening when she chose to speak, or simply sitting beside her when the silence was too much to bear. We started therapy together, hoping it would help her heal, but progress was slow, and some days felt like we were stuck in the same place. I worried for her every moment of every day. Her history of depression made everything worse. I saw her battle her inner demons, and no matter how much I tried to support her, I felt like I was losing her. Then, last week, our already fragile world was shattered again. She was pregnant. The news hit me like a wave, suffocating and overwhelming. I knew immediately that the baby wasn't mine. I had been working abroad for 2 months before the assault, and I had only come back early to care for her. When she told me, her voice was shaky, filled with fear and guilt. She was certain who the father was. It wasn't just any child. It was the child of the man who had taken everything from her. That hit me harder than anything else. It felt like a deep, sickening blow to my chest. I wanted to collapse under the weight of it all, but I had to hold it together for her. We sat her down and tried to talk through the impossible situation we found ourselves in. Everything felt like it was falling apart. And to make things more complicated, her faith, something that had always been her cornerstone, was now making everything even more difficult. She's a devout Catholic, and while we had initially discussed the possibility of abortion, everything changed when she spoke to her mother. Her mother's words were sharp, filled with harsh judgment. Under no circumstances should you abort that child. It's innocent, and you'll be damning yourself if you go through with it. Her voice wasn't just filled with religious conviction. It carried a chilling ultimatum. If my girlfriend chose abortion, she would no longer be her daughter. It wasn't just about the baby anymore. It was about loyalties to her mother, about her faith, and the weight of a mother's influence. That's when everything became more tangled. She was torn, her mother's rejection, her faith, and the trauma that still haunted her. The pressure of it all became too much to bear, and eventually, she decided to keep the baby. She told me, tears streaming down her face, "It's not the baby's fault." I could see the pain and fear in her eyes, but for me, the situation was different. I couldn't bring myself to raise a child that was the result of such violence. The thought of it was unbearable. I told her, plain and simple, "If you keep the baby, I'm leaving. If you choose abortion, I'll stay." It was harsh, even cruel, but I couldn't compromise on this. This wasn't just a decision about the baby. It was about protecting both of us from a constant reminder of what had happened. She begged me, sobbing as she pleaded for us to find another way. But I couldn't back down. The pain in her voice crushed me, but I knew I had to stand firm. I couldn't bring myself to raise a child born from such trauma. When I walked out that night, it felt like my heart was being ripped from my chest. I loved her more deeply than words could express, but I couldn't compromise on this. The weight of that decision was unbearable, but I knew I had to make it. Days passed, and then she called me. Her voice was trembling, almost unrecognizable as she said, "Please, just listen to me." She told me that after she confessed to her mother about not being able to keep the baby, her mother had disowned her. Her mother had called her a murderer, cursed her with words that echoed in the silence, and told her she would burn in hell. Then, as if that wasn't enough, her mother blocked her. It was a cruel twist of fate. The one person she had always turned to for guidance, for comfort, had turned against her at her most vulnerable moment. The woman who should have protected her had abandoned her when she needed her the most. The devastation in my girlfriend's voice was unbearable. I could feel her world crumbling, and with it, so was mine. The situation had become so much more than I could handle. She made the decision to have the abortion, but it wasn't because of me. It was because, after everything she had been through, she realized that raising the baby was something she couldn't live with. "Had you not stood your ground," she said, "I might have gone through with it and hated myself and the baby every single day. You saved me." The weight of her words hit me like a wave. I broke down. I had questioned myself 1,000 times, wondering if I had made the right choice, if I had done the right thing. But hearing her say those words made everything feel worth it. It was a bittersweet relief, knowing that I had helped her make the choice that allowed her to begin healing, even though the scars would never fully fade. The weeks leading up to the procedure were filled with anxiety and pain that seemed impossible to shake off. She went to counseling sessions and medical appointments, each one a painful reminder of the nightmare she had lived through. I watched her struggle, knowing that no matter how strong she was, this journey would never be easy. The day of the abortion arrived. She was brave, though I could see the fear in her eyes. It wasn't the procedure itself that would leave the scars. It was everything that came before and after. That night, she collapsed into my arms. She cried for hours, tears of relief, of pain, of loss. I didn't know what to say, but I knew I had to be there for her. The tears seemed endless, but I held her, not needing words. I just needed to hold her, and when she calmed, she told me she felt a weight lift from her chest. It wasn't gone, but it was a step forward. We sat together that night, talking about everything, the trauma she had endured, her fears for the future, and her hopes for what was to come. It was raw, vulnerable, but for the first time in months, it felt like we were facing everything together. Through her tears, she said, "Even though I've lost my mother, I haven't lost you, and that's enough." Her words shattered the last remnants of the anger I had felt toward her mother. In the face of everything, she had found a way to hold on to my love that, I realized, was enough to give her hope again. But the story didn't end there. A few days after the abortion, we were confronted with an unexpected nightmare. 2 police officers showed up at our door. Their presence was like a slap in the face, a harsh reminder that our lives had been hijacked by a cruel series of events. They had received a report saying my girlfriend might be in danger. One officer took me aside, asking sharp questions. How long had she been staying with me? Was she being held against her will? The other officer was with my girlfriend, asking if I had hurt her. The whole thing felt humiliating and invasive. And then I found out the report. Her mother. I was livid. I wanted to press charges, to make her face the consequences of what she had done. But my girlfriend begged me not to. She said her mother was lashing out in her pain, that she needed time to process everything. But it didn't stop there. Her mother called again. The threats were even worse this time. She told my girlfriend she would never see her family again, that she would never be reunited with her deceased father in heaven because of what she had done. The cruelty of it all was unimaginable. I couldn't hold back. I took the phone from my girlfriend and said, "You're a disgrace of a mother." I didn't wait for her response before hanging up. My girlfriend collapsed into my arms. For hours, she cried. Again, the weight of her mother's rejection was too much to bear. But by the next morning, something had shifted. She seemed lighter. We took a week off work and went camping to escape it all. Under the vast sky, she smiled for the first time in months. "Life is hard, but I'm glad I have you. We'll get through this," she said. Her words filled me with awe. How could someone who had been through so much still carry such strength? For the first time in months, I felt hope. It wasn't a cure-all, but it was a first step toward healing. This journey has been a nightmare, the hardest experience of both our lives, but it has shown me the depths of her resilience and the strength of our bond. We've weathered hell together, and we're still standing. To anyone reading this, even in the darkest moments,